presenters. We're so excited to have Patty Cardova, Grace Koo, Deborah Woodward, and Dr. John Vivian, all going to be sharing with us today about their work at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office Diversion Program. And I'm happy to be able to turn things over to you now. And I think, Patty, you're going to be starting to take the lead from now. If you're ready, I'll mute my mic.
I am ready.
And
Thank
more
you.
thing, I am going to go ahead and get that survey in now. So just so folks will know, they can look for it in a second. Thanks, Patty.
Okay. And here we go. Well, thank you, Mary Lou. I think what's coming up on everyone's screen right now is our PowerPoint. I'm going to just kick it off. And then we also have, as Mary Lou mentioned, we have Grace Koo, who works at Maricopa County Attorney's Office, Dr. John Vivian, who works at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. We all work together, the three of us, and then in partnership, we work with Deborah Woodward with Southwest Behavioral Health and Services. So the four of us are going to give you a quick overview of Maricopa County Attorney's Office diversion programs. I'm the director of it. I oversee all the programs. So I'll start it off, give you a quick overview, and then we're going to focus on our SMI diversion program. It's a felony diversion program, and we'll really get into the heart of who that serves and what is the program about. So we'll just go through this. I know there probably will be a lot of questions, and we'll get to those questions at the end. So hopefully we answer everything. We were given written questions as well. Hopefully our presentation will address all those questions that were submitted to us. But I just want to say before we get rolling here, thank you again, Mary Lou, for having us here. We're happy to talk about this. And we really do feel in Maricopa County, we are making really great strides with connecting the criminal justice system with the behavioral health community and really serving those individuals who have needs and to prevent people from going deeper into the criminal justice system if we can do that. So that's what diversion is about. So I think, Deborah, you're controlling this. So Deborah, if you're there, can you move to the next slide? Thank you. Purpose of training, just again, to go over this, it's going to be the four of us. And we're going to talk, I'm going to talk a little bit about diversion programs, just give you a really high level view of what's happening in our county. Then Grace is going to jump in. She's going to talk and introduce you to the SMI program and give you a little bit about its development. Then Deborah Woodward from Southwest Behavioral and Health Services. She's going to talk about really the program that goes on, the diversion program itself. And then Dr. John Vivian is going to talk about how we measure our outcomes and what we're looking for in all of our diversion programs. So that's what we'll cover. So next slide. So I just have a definition up here about what is prosecutor-led diversion. I am assuming this audience knows exactly what I'm talking about, but just as to frame this and give you a little bit more context of our discussion. So diversion in the prosecutorial world is that we make an offer. Our prosecutors make an offer to defense counsel when they're talking to their client, and it's a way to resolve a case. It's an untraditional way to solve a case. Instead of going from hearing to maybe trial to sentencing, we're not going down that traditional path. Our prosecutor files charges. They then, at the first hearing, they go to, and this is even before the prelim hearing, they go to defense counsel and they make an offer of diversion. It's not a plea agreement. No one is admitting to guilt, but they make an offer of diversion. And diversion means that we're offering that client, that offender, the opportunity to go into a treatment program or an educational class and to really address what are the underlying causes of their criminal behavior. So that's what we're doing. We suspend prosecution for 2 years. And typically the prosecutor and the client accept that. So it is a way to resolve a criminal case. It's untraditional. It's not going deep into the system. It's not taking them to trial and to sentencing. So next slide. So there's some case fundamentals. This is, again, just a few that I want to share with you about when we think about diversion. So when our prosecutors are thinking about offering diversion, we have policies behind every one of our diversion programs. So we can offer it, our prosecutors can offer diversion on an array of felonies and misdemeanors. Now, it's not all of felonies, not all misdemeanors, but our policies outline that. So in the second bullet, what I talk about is that every one of our programs, we have eligibility criteria for all of our diversion programs in our internal policies. And it's criteria that's built around the offender, who can really go into the diversion program. And then there's criteria about the offense. We also have statutory requirements that have prohibitions on which offenses cannot go into diversion. This is true across the state. So there are very serious offenses against children, sexual offenses, our higher level felonies. Obviously, those cannot be diverted. So our prosecutors offer this in Maricopa County, and you'll hear this a little bit different from county to county and even with municipalities. We offer diversion pre-conviction. Again, no one is admitting to guilt. But we do this post-filing. So once again, our prosecutors, they get a referral from law enforcement agencies. They look at that DR, that submittal, they file charges on it. And then at the first hearing, they talk about the formal complaint. So it is post-filing. And so if they agree to diversion, what it's meaning is that we're gonna suspend this prosecution because we were going down that path, and we filed criminal charges against the defendant, but we're going to stop and we're going to suspend prosecution again for 2 years. So that defendant enters diversion, and the only way to complete diversion is with one of two results, either successfully or unsuccessfully. So if they come out of diversion, they complete that class, that treatment program successfully, the charges are dismissed with prejudice. So we stop the prosecution, and with prejudice means we'll never refile on that. If they're unsuccessful, we reinstate prosecution. So it was suspended up to 2 years. If they come out of there unsuccessfully, we're reinstating prosecution, and they will be prosecuted. So next slide. So here's our goals when we talk about diversion. And again, I will show you on our next slide, we have an array of diversion programs, even though we're only highlighting one today. We want, with every diversion program, what we're trying to do is reduce the contact of any offender with the criminal justice system. We don't want them going deep into the criminal justice system if we find an appropriate individual with the offense and their amenability, their willingness to go into a treatment program. So we connect that individual to our community-based system of care. So we really are very selective of who we work with, and we make sure that proper care is given, and we set up contracts and programs. So we really want to do that. So it's really a partnership. We still hold the offender accountable for criminal conduct. They cannot go into a treatment program and just be a warm body. They have to engage. There has to be something where they are really involved in their treatment, and they really have to participate. And also, and this is to another bullet point, if there's restitution to a victim, we will make sure that the victim is made whole. They cannot be successfully released from diversion unless they pay the victim entirely with the restitution that's been determined. We also have a goal in diversion is that, and I've mentioned this, if anyone keeps on going deeper into the system, there's collateral consequences. If you have an offender that keeps on going deeper, goes onto probation, goes into the prison system, comes out on reentry, then they're on parole. With all those steps and all that deeper penetration into the system, there's disruptions in employment, schooling, family, and we really want to mitigate that. So that's what diversion truly tries to accomplish. I mentioned restoration to the victim. That's very important, obviously, out of a prosecutor's office. There's also practical reasons, prosecutorial resources. Everyone is dealing with resource limitations, and even now with everything that's going on with COVID, and there's limited resources and tax revenues coming in. So we cannot obviously take every offense and put it to trial. We can't have everyone be on probation. We can't put everyone in the prison system. So there are just some practical reasons, and we tell this to our prosecutors. Use your time efficiently. Use your time, your talents for those, and all your energies on those cases that are so serious that really should go to trial, and there really should be a different outcome. Otherwise, this diversion is a very appropriate and viable outcome for certain offenses. And at the last bullet point, we do want to increase public confidence in what we are doing. So as we set up diversion, and you'll hear this through our presentation, we are so careful about who we partner with and the types of contracts we have, the evidence-based programming that we direct our contractors to deliver. We are very careful about that, and we measure and we hold our providers accountable with giving us metrics back. So we do want there to be truly good impacts, not only for the individual, but for the community. And then my last slide. So this is a menu, if you will, of all of our diversion programs in Maricopa County. So I put felony diversion program up at the top. That's our newest one. That's our biggest one. We actually collapsed. Some of you may have heard our two other felony programs. One was with TASC for just drug offenses, and then we had FPIP through SAGE Counseling, which were for all the other felony offenses that were eligible, that were non-drug related. And so we closed down both of those programs. We now have the felony diversion program. And what we have is a carve out. And I have this in red, the SMI felony diversion program. It's a carve out of felony diversion, same eligibility criteria for both the offenders and the offenses. But this is now working with a certain population. We realized when we were setting up the felony diversion program that provider just didn't have the expertise to work with this population. And so we have now contracted with Southwest, and they are providing a fabulous program, and you'll hear about it, but it's truly for that population. We do have other programs, just real quickly. Animal cruelty, we do have that for both misdemeanors and felony offenses. Parenting skills education, that centers on that diversion program, is for anyone who assaults, and it has to be a parenting, someone who's in a parenting or caregiver role, assaults a child, a minor. And this cannot be your principal, your coach, your pastor. It's truly someone that's in a parental role. And that is someone that has lost control. It is not for your serious assaults and caused serious injury, but it's someone that needs obviously to go back and learn what is appropriate parenting, what's appropriate relationships. Justice court diversion, that is really for all of our misdemeanors. They go through a class, not so much treatment. We're revamping that right now. It may look different at the beginning of the year. Tobacco education, that is for any entity or individual that's cited for selling tobacco products to a minor. And we set up this class in conjunction with the Attorney General's office. Check enforcement program, been around for decades. People aren't writing checks as much as they were, but this is a program that we still have. I think almost every county has this for bad checks, and people are still writing bad checks, and we address that issue as well. And then we are setting up, probably for the fall, it'll happen, a domestic violence program, so that's in development right now. So we have a lot of programs, a lot more to come, but this is where we're at. And I will now turn it over to Grace, and she'll introduce you a little bit more to the SMI felony diversion program.
Thank you, Patty. Oh, I just got a message that my internet was spotty, so I'm going to try to go through this quickly before my internet dies. Next slide, please, Deborah. So the SMI felony diversion program launched in August of 2019. So it's been just about a year since we've had this program. As Patty mentioned, for all of our diversion programs, it's the Deputy County Attorney, the DCA, that is who's reviewing the charges and determining a defendant's eligibility for diversion. Lower level felonies, generally class 4, 5, and 6s are the charges that these offenders have. But the distinction here is they must have an SMI designation. So when an offer is made to defense, if there is already a designation, then typically they go into this program. If there's not a designation, we do provide instructions to defense counsel on how to get an evaluation. And if they want to pursue that option, that's great. We wait and see how the evaluation comes out. If they don't want to wait or there's not a designation, as Patty mentioned, we have other diversion programs that the offender may be eligible for. So also, as she mentioned, prosecution is suspended for 2 years. And while we've only had this program for a year, we have had a few people successfully complete the program. So it is definitely doable in under the 2 years. Restitution, if applicable to the case, the collection of that is mandatory and it is capped at $2,000. There are no payment plans. If that's something that the defendant wants to work out with Southwest Behavioral Health, just to have a steady expectation of what and budgeting, that's fine. But in the end, it has to be paid in full for a successful completion. And as Patty mentioned, charges will be dismissed with prejudice if they complete the program successfully. And if they are unsuccessfully terminated, then will resume prosecution. And Southwest Behavioral Health is our contractor for the program. So next slide, please. So what happens when the defendant is referred? So Southwest Behavioral Health will conduct an intake and administer an assessment, and we are using the Ohio Risk Assessment System, otherwise known as ORAS. And the ORAS determines the defendant's overall risk to reoffend, and it helps to develop an individualized treatment plan. I'm going to speak more specifically about ORAS in just a few minutes. Decision Points is the curriculum that we use in this program. And in Decision Points, there are 5 specific lesson plans in cognitive restructuring, which help change attitudes and beliefs. There are also numerous activities to reinforce the skill development in these lessons. And it also can be modified for those with learning disabilities and those with SMI. There are numerous scenarios and group practice sessions which allow for individuals and peers to learn from each other and to learn from the lessons. The other great thing about Decision Points is that it's open entry. So that means defendants can start whenever they're referred into the program. And if they miss a session, they can make it up when it comes back around. Now, our program is an individualized program, meaning that the treatment length will vary. And that's because every defendant's situation is different. Every defendant's level of comprehension, their skill development are different. And with all of our diversion programs, we aren't using a cookie cutter approach. Where we treat everybody the same way, it's gotta be the same, where we have no flexibility. What's really great about our vendors and Southwest Behavioral Health is that we understand that life happens, and sometimes there are challenges and there are daily life issues that will affect if they get to the group each time, or if they have transportation. And so Southwest Behavioral Health is terrific about reaching out to our clients. And if the person really wants to get through the program, Southwest Behavioral works with them on a very strength-based, asset-based approach. And so while the defendant, of course, needs to be held accountable for their actions, there is that still a balance between acknowledging that they have to be held accountable, but also so that they can learn in a different way, and that we can be flexible in how their treatment is. Next slide, please. So I want to talk about costs, general costs for this program. So when they go to the program, Southwest Behavioral Health will verify if a client is eligible for access or may qualify for access. We have found thus far that everyone has been eligible for access. Either they're currently on access or maybe they've fallen off, but Southwest Behavioral Health will help them re-qualify and get re-enrolled. But in the future, if there are clients who are not eligible for access, Southwest Behavioral Health has a financial assessment process, and the client may be eligible for a sliding scale, i.e. a discount in fees. Next slide, please. So before I get into ORAS specifically, I want to talk about risk assessments and classifications. So why is doing an assessment so critical? So risk and need assessment tools afford criminal justice agencies the ability to learn more about individuals to best address their risk and need factors specific to that person, and as a result, best strategize effective treatment interventions. So we know that not all offenders are equal in their risk to reoffend or their need for treatment or programming. So the intent of using the risk assessment is to separate offenders into risk groups determined by their likelihood to recidivate and to identify their risk factors and criminogenic needs to guide and prioritize their treatment plan. So let's talk about classifications. So effective classification is based upon 4 principles: risk, need, responsivity, and professional discretion. So when conducting a risk assessment, risk states that the intervention or treatment should be matched by risk level, with the most intensive treatment given to higher risk offenders. So risk is the who. It helps us answer who our efforts should target. And keep in mind, this is the risk of reoffending and not the risk of the seriousness of the offense. So need. Need is the what. It's what are we going to target for change? And in this case, we are going to target the criminogenic needs. What is responsivity? Responsivity helps us decide the how. How are we going to help offenders be successful? So this may mean an individual's learning style, possible barriers to intervention, their motivation to change, their maturity, their cognitive functioning, even their native language. And because we're talking today in this presentation, mental illness is a responsivity factor. You have to be aware of this in order to determine how they're going to be successful in treatment. And I'll get more into this in just a few minutes as well. Finally, professional discretion allows for a process whereby an override can take place in the risk level score. So clinicians, case managers, probation officers, and other professionals who are doing the risk assessments, they often have other collateral information which may provide additional information or contradict something that the defendant has told you or not told you when they are being interviewed. So for an example, case managers, they may also interview family members to that defendant. They may have access to police reports, which may contradict something that the offender has told you during the interview. And in those examples, an override may be appropriate on how you score the risk assessment, or in our case, the ORAS. Generally speaking, overrides should not occur more than 10% of the time. Next slide, please. So what are criminogenic risk factors? These are dynamic factors that are highly correlated with criminal conduct. So in the criminal justice arena, the discussion about criminal risk factors, criminogenic needs, that's been around for over a decade. And when you look up criminogenic risk factors, you'll see that what's commonly referred to are the 8 that I have listed on this slide. And sometimes you'll see them broken out by the big 4 and the little 4, which is how I have them on the slide. I'm going to just briefly go over what each of these are. First, antisocial beliefs. This is someone who has pro-criminal attitudes, values, or a belief system, a criminal orientation. and may rationalize that crime pays. They also may have an emotional state of anger, resentment, and defiance towards the system, and that something is owed to them. The next one is antisocial peers and associates. These are folks that have close association with people who have criminal inclinations, and they have relative isolation from those who are anti-criminal. The next one is antisocial personality. This refers to one who is temperamental and antisocial in terms of patterns. It's conducive to criminal activity. They may be impulsive. They may have weak problem solving, lack of coping or self-regulation skills, poor anger management control, adventurous, pleasure seeking, weak self-control, restlessness, and aggression. The next one is criminal history and antisocial behavior. So this shows for some that they may have been involved in criminal activity in a variety of different ways and may have been involved in criminal activity at a very young age. The next one is familial factors. So this can include family dysfunction, low levels of affection or caring and cohesiveness, poor parental supervision or lack of discipline in the home, and there may be some criminality with some of their family members that they are aware of. The next one is lack of personal education, lack of personal education, vocational or family achievement. This refers to low levels of performance or satisfaction in school and or work, vocational training and or finances. The next one is lack of pro-social leisure and recreation. We know that idle time can lead some into trouble. So idle time may contribute to interaction with antisocial peers, and offenders may replace pro-social behavior with antisocial behavior if they have too much time on their hands. And finally, substance abuse. Drug and alcohol abuse may lead engagement with antisocial peers and impacts pro-social skills. So next slide, please. So why is mental illness a criminogenic risk factor? So it's a myth that symptoms of mental illness directly cause recidivism for those with mental illness. Mental health symptoms don't drive most people with mental illness to commit crimes. So by simply treating the mental health symptoms, it will have minimal effect on recidivism. Research has shown that there is little relevance regarding the prediction of criminal behavior and psychiatric symptomology. You know, just because you have a mental health diagnosis does not automatically warrant placement in a high-risk group or supervision. It's more important to emphasize to clinicians and case managers and other professionals administering the risk assessment tool that the questions are asked and the scoring be done with fidelity. Case planning and treatment planning needs should be based off of the criminogenic risk factors and also the responsivity of the individual. As I said earlier, mental health is a responsivity factor, not a criminogenic factor. It's how you deal with your criminogenic needs, but not necessarily the first thing you deal with. So as a professional, recognizing what the offender needs is a responsivity factor. And there may be times where the offender needs stabilization before they can start treatment. But you have to be aware of their responsivity factors when considering what will be effective or be a barrier in their treatment. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk about the ORAS, which stands for Ohio Risk Assessment System. ORAS was developed by the University of Cincinnati Corrections Institute. It is a compilation of screening and assessment tools for justice-involved populations, from diversion to re-entry to the community from prison. So we are using the community supervision tool for our diversion clients. The tools are all evidence-based and used by many jurisdictions across the country. Many of our offenders who undergo the ORAS assessment have multiple needs, and some are criminogenic and some are not.
Deb, I don't know how to leave. Or turn this. It won't go into large view.
I'm sorry. I
That's
think we have someone that needs to get muted. We're hearing conversation. Thanks.
So why did MCAO select the ORAS? So as a criminal justice agency, MCAO wanted our diversion programs and the clinicians in our programs to focus their efforts on the criminogenic needs. We wanted agencies to work on what has proven to have an effect on recidivism. So in order to be able to deliver the ORAS, staff must be trained, they must be certified. MCAO made ORAS a part of all of our felony diversion programs. We included in part of every contract, and we sponsor 2 training sessions, certification training sessions, including a train the trainer, so that for all of our vendors, as they have new employees come on board, or if they have employees move from assessment to another position, that they have a way to get their people trained in ORAS. ORAS determines the overall risk level from low to very high. And ORAS identifies risk levels and points clinicians towards need areas that must be addressed to reduce recidivism. You'll see that ORAS has 7 criminogenic needs. They refer to them as domains, which align very closely with the 8 criminogenic risk factors that I previously mentioned. That's all that I have. I'll now turn it over to my colleague, Deborah, who will present on the details of the program and the deliverables. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm really excited to be here this morning presenting with the Maricopa County Attorney's Office because this is really such a wonderful program. I'll start with introducing myself. My name is Deborah Woodard, and I'm the Vice President of Community Resilience at Southwest Behavioral and Health Services. I have worked for Southwest Behavioral Health for 21 years, specializing in the treatment of persons experiencing the impacts of severe mental illness, the adult population. During my time there, I've developed many programs, including the SMI residential and treatment programs. I worked on homeless initiatives, housing, and now I'm excited in the last couple of years to be working on developing programs specifically for partnerships with the criminal justice system, working on developing really a continuum of care for how Southwest Behavioral Health as an agency interacts and engages in a purposeful way with the criminal justice system, defining common goals. Some of my projects, just to give you a little bit of a background in addition to this one that I'm going to present today, I have a criminal justice engagement team, which I am going to cover today, doing quite a bit of work with Maricopa County Correctional Health in the jail system. We also have a court liaison program with the City of Phoenix, doing much work with the Phoenix Municipal Court as far as the diversion work. And then we have 2 programs that are specialized grants working specifically with the opioid use population in the criminal justice system. So coming together with the Maricopa County Attorney, we're really partnering with a purpose. We share a common goal here with the Maricopa County Attorney that integration of behavioral health in the criminal justice system is an effective long-term solution. These two criminal justice and behavioral health are two different worlds, but we found a commonality here in realizing that the goal of our work is to offer effective treatment options and in place of a costly incarceration while still maintaining some accountability for the person in the diversion program. We all know that incarceration rates are high in Arizona. However, we believe that we can reduce incarceration through these programs, and by assisting in reducing recidivism, especially in persons who can be better served by the behavioral health system. So what we're doing is creating really systemic change in the way that we work together that benefits on two levels. There's a macro level where this work is extremely important to our community, and that's really in the reduction of the burdens to the community created when people are just constantly running through the criminal justice system and we see high recidivism. So we can really work together on reducing the burdens through programs like this. And of course, the individual really benefits. Those who engage can come out at the other end really on a meaningful path to productivity in life. All right. So again, this program has no grant funds behind it. Again, it's a partnership that's really come together to create long-term sustainable change in how we work together to solve our problems going forward in the future. So what Southwest Behavioral Health has brought to the table is we're leveraging pre-existing funding contracts and internal resources to help pay for services. And we bring with us fully developed treatment programs for specialized treatment of the SMI population. So there's a lot of assets to go with this, things like a supportive housing program, a large day program for the SMI population, job development programs that help people get jobs. Of course, we have a myriad of housing and residential treatment programs. We have outpatient services. We have some primary care services. So many things that people can get into at Southwest Behavioral Health by entering through this program in the door. I may have forgot to mention that the Southwest is statewide. We are spanned across Maricopa County and 4 northern Arizona counties. The Maricopa County attorney brought with them available funding for this wonderful criminogenic training, and of course the source for potential program beneficiaries for referral into treatment. All right, let's talk about our target population. So what we're looking at for this this program specifically is adults diagnosed with a serious mental illness that have committed a low-level felony. And as both Patty and Grace stated, we're looking for that person who's maybe early in the process before they get too deep into the system, and looking to see if we can create a change at this particular point in the process that somebody can transition into something better. Usually what we're looking at in this population is not just the serious mental illness. We're looking at more of a complex case presentation where there are many risk factors that go with this that have led the person down to the path that they have ended up with an interaction with the criminal justice system. So I feel like the risk factors that go along with this are largely in line with what Grace just presented for the Ohio Risk Assessment System and looking at criminogenic risk factors. We see things like substance abuse. We may see co-occurring disorders. We may see somebody with co-occurring medical disorders and declining health. They're indigent, homeless, have a lack of education, poor social or family support. Many of these people are fallen in the crack and have become disconnected from services and have a lack of stability. I know in the questions there was some concern about, you know, is this treatment good for people with learning disabilities? And I really wanted to address some of the differences in the population here. A serious mental illness doesn't affect somebody's ability to learn. more so what we see is somebody who's unstable coming in. So psychiatrically, they're not doing well. Maybe they're not on their medication, which has led to a greater functional impairment of what's going on in the case presentation. So we definitely want to be able to support those things and address people where they are in the terms of their stability with their mental health issues. So SMI is really defined as a mental, behavioral, emotional disorder resulting in the serious functional impairment. So when we came together and we talked about, you know, what can we do with this population and how can we partner, it was super important to us to have this individualized treatment plan, that we could be flexible and holistic in the process in dealing with each individual's unique needs in the complex case presentation that we see so often in the SMI population. We also wanted an evidence-based cognitive behavioral intervention and really something that's nourishing to the person and was going to be very positive for them. We determined that we needed people to be reconnected to services. So often people have fallen in the cracks. They're disconnected from their regularly assigned clinical team and service providers that they had in the community. Really important that we'll get to is we looked at what are the barriers that are stopping people from being able to be successful in this type of treatment. And a lot of it has to do with basic needs. We can't really provide viable services if people are don't have any housing, are worried about where their next meal is going to come from, and don't have any transportation. So we realized that we really needed to address these barriers and issues of basic needs that were preventing people from being able to participate. We also looked at assistance in navigating through the court process. It can be scary in the court process. What do I do next? How do I get there? So our navigators definitely make sure people are getting to those appointments and understand what the next steps are. We also work on coordinating physical health care, other supportive services, and again, doing these things while still emphasizing the accountability for the critical criminal conduct and working towards reducing recidivism. If we're successful, we should see people moving on and not continue a cycle in the criminal justice system in the program. All right. So I want to present what we came up with, which is a comprehensive program design. So what we have is the criminal justice engagement team, which provides community navigation. Then we have an evidence-based, positively focused criminogenic treatment program, and that's wrapped with supportive case management and integrated treatment planning. So I want to go over this part for the criminal justice engagement team. So this program has been in operation for a few years now, and it was originally a partnership with Mercy Care. And what we really wanted to do at the time that it was put together is look at the short time person. That's the people that were popping into the 4th Avenue jail and getting released in less than 24 hours, only to turn around and be rearrested. So people were revolving in the criminal justice system, committing low-level petty offenses. So what we started to do is we are now able to do jail in-reach. So we really work to develop rapport with people while they're in jail, offering these services and offering all the supports. The rapport is really key to develop relationships with people that are trusting and supportive. So when they get out of jail, then the team is able to follow them back out into the community to help them solve all these barriers and reasons that they've been in this cycle. So the goal is really to be a supportive partner in the recovery and transition process for the individual. So again, the criminal justice team, the beauty is jail in reach and being able to follow people out into the community, doing community outreach and getting people into the services they need and getting them the supports that they need. So the criminal justice engagement team is working really, when you look at the hierarchy of needs, they're working on that base model, working on the physiological and safety needs, all the things that really become a barrier to people being successful in treatment. So we look for housing, and we get food boxes and provide social supports and that reconnection for service. This part of it is really about the basic needs process. What's wonderful is this team is very supportive of the client getting to their treatment. So if somebody can't make it to their treatment session that's required by the court, we will go pick them up. And we will work to resolve those issues and reasons that has been preventing them from participating. So our actual criminogenic treatment plan, program, and I really want to focus on this, is really ask the question, what is right with you? Really, in behavioral health treatment, trying to figure out what the exact disorder, the deficit, the dysfunction, everything that's wrong with somebody doesn't help somebody recover. So focusing on people's strengths, what's right with them, is what works in treatment. And it was important to us to apply these very same things to this criminogenic treatment program that we've seen work so wonderfully, not just with the SMI population, but really all the populations that we've had an opportunity to work with. So it starts with the assessment process. So we do 3 different types of assessment. Everybody coming in will get a traditional behavioral health assessment, which is a comprehensive biopsychosocial assessment that looks at the current circumstance and history across these basic 3 factors: the biological, which are physical and medical, your psychological, and then social factors going on, because we want to really get a good picture of the presentation going on for the individual. Everybody will get a Ohio risk assessment system assessment, where we're assessing across 7 domains and looking at those risks for recidivism. And as we notice again, the risk factors here in the criminogenic treatment program are some of the very same risk factors we see that's creating barriers for people. Things, they're obviously criminal history and education, employment, family and social, sport, neighborhood that they came from, substance abuse, and some of the antisocial attitudes or behavioral problems that have been developed fall largely in line with many of the general risk factors in a complex case. So if we can really work on those specific risk factors and solving those for people, we're going to see some good amount of success, which we have with this program. We also do, through positive psychology, the character strengths survey. So looking at what strengths people have in character. And of course, research has revealed that people who use their strengths, when we're functioning from a positive perspective here, are more likely to flourish than those that do not use their strengths. So what we really want to do is look at the reshaping somebody into a courageous survivor and looking at the steps of courage, the strengths in their story of despair, to see what we can take from that and move forward in treatment. So Decision Points is the cognitive behavioral program that was selected by the Maricopa County Attorney, and we like this program because it is open, meaning people can come into the program or leave any time, which is ideal for the way the program works. And Decision Points is built on the principle of a strategy of choices. And, you know, really empowering people with choices is very powerful, giving them the tools they need to make good decisions. So in Decision Points, they really work to stop the trouble cycle. So there's many topics covered in Decision Points, but it kind of follows around the same model of thinking, that we're working people to identify their thoughts and feelings, what they were feeling just before they got into trouble, what led up to that, and what were they doing, thinking. So we raise awareness of that. And then to think about, you know, who else might care about what they do? Would a family member care about that? Would a shopkeeper care if you took something from their store? So in this, you get to basically a decision point as shown in the slide, where you're really stopping and thinking about where your thoughts and feelings are leading you, so you can make a good choice at that particular decision point or transition point. The program goes through brainstorming what choices could have you made that would have been different in that case scenario, teaching people what choices lead away from trouble and what choices can I feel okay about. So really empowering the individual to make those decisions and think about those things, teaching them how to go through these steps in the process before they get into trouble. And the last one is thinking about things that they can do for themselves to motivate them towards making the right choices. So this is wonderful. We can apply all sorts of scenarios and situations to this 4-step process, and teaching people how to rethink what's going on before they get into trouble. Now, we took this program and we paired it with positive psychology, because again, we wanted to have a very positive focus, focusing on what's right with people. People have been through so much and heard everything that's wrong and everything that is negative. So use of positive psychology is really a scientific approach to studying things that are positive, the focus on strengths instead of weakness, and what it means to build a good life instead of focusing on repairing the bad. So this is a completely different focus of showing somebody a different path and how things can be for them. We work on building assets with this, and focusing on helping people redefine their life narrative and where they're going. So positive psychology spends a lot of time thinking about optimism and hope and well-being and being grateful for things. So working through that in life, what are you grateful for? What is going well? What makes you happy? And that process of focusing on all those things are positive is a process that helps distance the individual from the deviance and crime. And through this, it's found that it's been found to reduce criminogenic risk factors and, of course, produce more favorable outcomes in treatment for the individuals that participate. So the topic examples that we have for positive psychology is we focus on that strength survey, but we look at the value of life, doing a gratitude journal, sleep hygiene, social support, dimensions of wellness, and really thinking about those positive things. So I think this has been an excellent pairing with Decision Points for the program. People have been really thankful for a second chance and thankful for the program. And of course, then we put some traditional therapies in that, making sure that we're covering things like substance abuse treatment, anger management, looking at the change processes, and the recovery model for persons with mental illness is also very positively focused, focusing on personal responsibility and choices in the treatment process for yourself. So the last part is really supportive case management in this integrated treatment plan that I've been talking about. So supportive case management is really something that's very intentional, where we're working with persons on a process of decision making about the available choices and options. So letting people know, hey, I have a possibility for housing here, or I don't, or where are you going to stay? You know, just being a broker of these services and helping people work through life choices and working towards being a catalyst of change in that person's life through this very supportive process as people are working through their treatment and dealing with the many other things that they're dealing with their life at the particular time. Integrated treatment planning, again, is based on the full biopsychosocial, the criminogenic risk assessment factors, and include that planning for the basic needs that go along with so many of these cases. So we want to be fully comprehensive, again, flexible, taking a holistic look at all the things people need. Now, if people aren't well enough, say, to attend decision points or to go through some of the sit-down classes, we've had cases where we've gone back and let the Maricopa County attorney know, man, this person's really unstable right now. I don't think they're even well enough to attend decision points. And it's wonderful to be able to be flexible enough to realize that and to be able to write a very individualized and specific treatment plan for that person while we work on the process of stabilization and really dig to look for ways that we can help people be successful in this program. And I really like that the Maricopa County attorney has said to us, Southwest Behavioral Health, we're going to let you determine through treatment if somebody has been successful in treatment or not, which allows us a large latitude to deal with people with special needs in this type of program. So there's not an exact length of time for the program, and that's because graduation is really by merit. We want people to come and participate and to get something out of this. And this is very different than some of the time-based programs that have occurred over time. We don't want people in this program doing time. We want them to really work on making change in their life, fully participating the best that they can based on their individual plan. When you work a merit-based program like this, people make personal gains in the program based on their own individual merit. When you gain something for yourself and you can attribute that gain to your actions, you are much more likely to hold on to that gain and do well moving forward. The expectation is completion in under 1 year is what we originally thought. We are seeing that people are completing in just under 1 year. We have had, since the inception, 24 people have entered the program. By today, hopefully this week, we had our 6th graduate, which we're really celebrating. And again, participants are really grateful for the classes and the second chances. I want to take this time too to address some of the questions that I saw come in on the email while we were preparing for this presentation. So how does somebody get kicked out? We give somebody every chance we can possibly give them. If you miss some classes, we will be looking for you to try to re-engage you. We do not want people to fall out of this program, and we understand that people with severe mental illness cycle. And and they may miss a couple classes. They may fall out for a month, but we want to try to stay reconnected with them and make every attempt. So when we have exhausted everything, the criminal justice engagement team has done all the outreach, looked for them in the community. We have tried everything in treatment that we can possibly think of, and it becomes just very clear that the person does not want to participate and is not going to engage. Then that's how you fall out of the program and it becomes unsuccessful. We have asked, you know, when people have come back and resurfaced and said, can I get back in? We had one case where somebody came back. So again, all the flexibility in the world to try to keep people into this program and have it be successful. All right, so that completes my portion of the presentation, and it's my understanding we're waiting for questions till the end, which Mary Lou is going to moderate for us. So that takes us on to John Vivian, who is going to talk about measuring results. John?
Thank you, Ms. Woodard. If you could advance to the next slide, please.
Yep.
So as Deborah said, my name is John Vivian. I'm the Diversion Program Evaluator for the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. If you're a numbers person, then this will be the best part of the presentation. If you're not a numbers person, then I promise to talk fast and get through this part quickly so the pain isn't too much for you. But my presentation will cover 4 topics. I'll review the metrics that we use with our providers. And by the way, I'm stepping back from the SMI program and talking about all of our diversion programs, not specifically just to the SMI program. So I'll be talking about the metrics. I'll be talking about the scorecard that we have, the outcomes that we track relative to our programs, and then how we conduct program evaluations. Next slide, please. So our 3 providers, which are Southwest Behavioral Health, Sage Counseling, and La Frontera Impact, are all required to submit to us on a monthly basis metrics. Those metrics include the number of new enrollments during the month, the total enrolled during that month, the number of participants who successfully completed the program, the number that were unsuccessfully terminated from the program, and for each participant who completes the program, we're also requiring the providers to give us a discharge report. Those discharge reports document the participants' overall risk level, their top 3 criminogenic needs, their corresponding treatment goals, their treatment plan, etc. Next slide, please. So I mentioned enrollments. This graphic shows the average number of enrollments by month for our 2 largest diversion programs historically. And the green bar represents the drug diversion program, and the red bar represents the felony pretrial intervention program, or the FPIP program. As Ms. Cordova said at the outset, both of those programs ended, and we're moving forward with the new felony diversion program. But if you look at the first bar, that represents the average number of enrollments by month for fiscal year 2019. And for those 2 large programs, we had an average of 1,607 enrollments every month. That increased in fiscal year 20, the year that just ended, to 1,716. Those 2 programs, as Patty said, were replaced by our new felony diversion program, and my projections are that we'll see on average 1,987 people enrolled every month in our felony diversion program. We will use that enrollment data that we obtain from our providers, along with data that we extract from our internal case management system, to populate our scorecard. Next slide, please. Prior to coming to work for the County Attorney's Office, I worked for many years in Arizona State government. During that time, I learned about the Arizona Management System, which is based on lean transformation principles. The Arizona Management System uses scorecards to track data or metrics relating to key agency activities. We've had a monthly scorecard in our group for 2 years, and we're going to have one again in fiscal year 2021. The scorecard that's on the screen now was our scorecard for the fiscal year that ended in June. I apologize for the small size of the numbers on that scorecard. Hopefully some of you took the time to print out the handout that I sent out ahead of time to Mary Lou, and you can look at that. Otherwise, what I want to do next is kind of highlight some of the key features of our scorecard. So this was the scorecard for the fiscal year that ended in June. The scorecard records monthly values for a variety of metrics for the respective program. Those metrics typically are number of new enrollments, total enrolled, and then we track the number that were successfully discharged. In the case of the metric successful discharges, we compare each program's monthly performance against a target. And those targets are then, or the values, the monthly values are then color coded. If a program achieves or exceeds the percentage that were successfully discharged, the target for that month, then that month's value is coded green. If they are within 75% of that target for that month, then they're coded yellow. And if they're below 75% of the target for their month, they're coded red. So I'm going to walk you through the scorecard real quickly. The program at the top is our old check enforcement program that Patty talked about earlier. The column entitled JOP on the extreme left-hand side represents the values from the prior year, which in this case would have been fiscal year 2019. So with check enforcement, looking at that first metric, we see the average number of new enrollments for 2019 was 12.8. The year-to-date column in orange after that shows the annual values for fiscal year 20. The average number of new enrollments for our check enforcement program was slightly lower in 20 than it was in 19, and that was 11.9. Going down a row to the restitution row, we see that for fiscal year 2019, as part of the check enforcement program, we collected and dispersed $198,000 to crime victims of bad checks. And in 2020, the amount collected and dispersed to crime victims was $108,000. The metrics for check enforcement are called, from a scorecard standpoint, reporting only, which means they do not have targets associated with them. Moving down a layer, the next program on our scorecard is our old felony pretrial intervention program, or FPIP. For this program, we reported the number of new enrollments, total enrollments, and percent successful. This program also had monthly targets, and those monthly targets for fiscal year 2020 were actually the monthly averages for fiscal year 2019. In other words, for fiscal year 20, we wanted to track to see how well that program was able to achieve the success rate of the previous year. And you can see in the color coding, which is easier to see than those small numbers, that for most months, we met or exceeded our targets. But there were 4 months where we fell for the FPIP program slightly below our target. For the year, for the FPIP program, we had an overall success rate of 76%, which was higher than the fiscal year 2019 success rate of 61%. Below the felony pretrial intervention program on our scorecard is our old drug diversion program. And you can see that program has similar metrics as FPIP, and that for most months, when you look at the successful completion row, that we've met or exceeded our target for most of those months. At the end of the year, at the end of fiscal year 20, the drug diversion program had a 56% success rate, which was slightly higher than the success rate for our drug diversion program in fiscal year 19. The next program down, so we had check enforcement, FPIP, drug diversion. Now the next program down is our justice court program. This is for misdemeanors, as Patty said earlier. And as you can see, the program had several months in the red, which meant for those months, the monthly values for the percent successfully discharged were less than the 75% target, which was the actual for fiscal year 19. Now, the Arizona management system teaches us not to fear those red events, but instead use them as opportunities to identify processes that should be improved. Without scorecards and without monthly metrics and targets, agencies could have process problems that go undetected. So we welcome the red as an invitation to dig down to find out what's going wrong. The Justice Court program ended fiscal year 20 with a success rate of 78%, which was slightly lower than the success rate that program achieved in fiscal year 19, which was 85.9%. Below Justice Court are our 3 new diversion programs: Parenting Skills, our SMI program, which is the focus of our presentation today, and finally our Animal Cruelty program. As new programs, we're still in the early stages of collecting baseline data on them, but we hope in the future to track them just like we track FPIP, drug diversion, and Justice Court. So in general, scorecards provide agencies with a quick overview of how their programs are operating, and scorecards relate to a quote attributed to Carl Pearson, a famous statistician. Pearson said, quote, "When performance is measured, performance improves. And when performance is measured and reported back, the rate of improvement accelerates," end quote. Next slide, please, Zebra. We track the outcomes of our programs 2 ways. First, as you saw in our scorecard, we track program success rates. Research has found that programs that adhere to evidence-based practices typically have successful completion rates between 65 and 85%. 2 of the 3 programs that I just covered with you in our scorecard met that standard. As Ms. Cordova mentioned, we recently ended the drug diversion and FPIP programs and started our new felony diversion program. We are hoping that the new program achieves high success rates. In addition to tracking our programs on a monthly basis with our scorecards, we also track recidivism, the recidivism rate of those who successfully complete our programs. Next slide, please. Historically, we have tracked recidivism one way, which was a new submittal to the county attorney's office, and for only one program, our felony pretrial intervention program, or FPIP. Last year, we added 3 more measures of recidivism, and they were rearrest, new criminal conviction, or a new prison sentence. This table shows recidivism rates for FPIP graduates for 2 of our release cohorts, those who graduated in fiscal year 16, those who graduated in fiscal year 17, and the last column on the right is simply the average of the values for those 2 release cohorts. This table shows recidivism rates for FPIP graduates for 2 full years after their graduation. As you can see, on average, only 15.4% of the graduates had a new arrest after they graduated within 2 years. Only 6.7% had a new submittal for prosecution. Only 12.1% had a new criminal conviction within 2 years of their graduation, and only 1% were sentenced to an Arizona prison. This year, we will track the recidivism rates of graduates from 3 of our new programs, including our large new felony diversion program, our animal cruelty, and parenting skills. Perhaps in the future, we will add the SMI diversion program to our recidivism collection efforts. Next slide, please. We evaluate our programs using a tool called the Correctional Program Checklist. The Correctional Program Checklist is an assessment tool designed to measure or designed to quantify program quality by determining how closely programs meet known principles of evidence-based practices. Through several recent studies, Dr. Ed Latessa and colleagues at the University of Cincinnati have found high correlations between scores on the CPC and measures of recidivism. In other words, programs that have high scores on the CPC have low recidivism results. The CPC tool resulted from an assessment of over 40,000 offenders, both adult and juvenile, and over 400 institutional and community-based programs like the ones that we operate. When we do a CPC evaluation, we look at a program in the context of 73 specific program standards. The programs are evaluated through structured staff and client interviews. Other information reviewed includes policy and procedure manuals, treatment materials, curriculum, and a sample of case files. In addition, the best part is we observe the treatment groups and we assess them. Once the information is gathered and reviewed, the program is scored and a report is generated, which identifies program strengths and weaknesses. Specific recommendations for improvement are given, and program scores are compared to national averages. My staff and I, when I worked for the state, completed many institutional and community-based program evaluations using the CPC. Now, there are several advantages to using this tool. First, it is applicable to a wide range of programs. Second, as I mentioned before, it allows us to quantify the quality of a program. This allows us comparison across programs and also allows us to compare the same program over time. A third advantage of the CPC is that the entire process can be done quickly. Usually the information can be gathered in a week or so and the report generated not long afterwards. The final quality of the CPC that I value is that it provides specific recommendations to help that program improve its effectiveness and integrity. The results include a discussion of both program strengths and areas in need of improvement. The recommendations are specific and include such things as the program needs to adopt a risk assessment tool to help guide the treatment dosage that the participants receive, or the program needs to define clear program completion criteria other than the client runs out of money. To date, at the county attorney's office, we've evaluated the FPIP program using the correctional program checklist. I just did a one-year follow-up on that evaluation to see the progress the provider has been making on achieving some of our recommendations. Perhaps someday soon, I'll be asked to evaluate the SMI program. In summary, we use data 4 ways in our group's operations. First, we rely upon data from our providers to keep us informed as what's happening there on the ground. Second, we combine the provider data with some of our own internal data to populate a scorecard, which allows us to track the performance of our program on a monthly basis. Third, while many correctional staff talk about how their programs reduce recidivism, we actually collect recidivism data involving 4 different measures of recidivism, and we do that every year. Last, we conduct program evaluations on our programs, which produce detailed reports pretty quickly, and that result in specific recommendations that the program should follow in order to reduce its recidivism and improve its overall effectiveness. That's it. That's my presentation.
Okay, Patty, I didn't know if you wanted to do say a few words before we do the questions. Patty, you're still muted.
Can you hear me now? I think I'm
Yes.
unmuted. Sorry
Yes.
about that. I just wanted to say that we did have the contact information up. I may have enlarged my screen and I can't see. Here it is. All of our contact information is up there if you want to get a hold of any one of us. I should just explain real quickly Grace's role within our MCAO. She is involved in all contracts and vendor relations. She's always involved in program development. And then John, as you can see, is our metrics guy, our criminal researcher. So together, the 3 of us really work collectively on putting all of this together. So I give lots of credit to them for all the work that's been done. And definitely, I think Southwest has been doing a fantastic job. So I'm just appreciative of everyone that we work with, and certainly we can answer some of the questions that have popped up. So I'll let you shoot some of those questions our way, Mary Lou.
Thank you, Patty, and thank to each of you for a great overview. A lot of interest, a lot of excitement